All right, joining me right now over the phone is Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball, Mike Irwin alongside as well. First off, we've got to talk about some of these Razorbacks that are draft eligible. Heston Kjerstad is obviously one of the top guys. What do you see from him, and kind of where do you see him going?
Well, I think when you look at his body of work at the first 4 weeks, I mean, it was as good as it gets. I mean, you're talking about just premier power. You know, he hit that home run in the Shriners College Classic. I know it feels like it was like 8 months ago now, but, you know, he hit that big home run to center field against Texas. He looked the part early, and I think he's a guy that could very well end up being kind of a top 8 or 9 pick in the draft. You know, he's got premium power. He's gotten better in the outfield as he's gotten more experience. He certainly has a very steady offensive approach. Obviously, very mature. You know, I love what he brings to the table. I think when you look at Casey Opitz, you know, he didn't have a great first 4 weeks, but you know what? It was solid. He's going to be a premier defender behind the plate. He's certainly still a very good defender. You know, I still think his best days are ahead of him from an offensive standpoint. And obviously, Heston will be a first rounder. He's one of those guys that I think will probably end up being, you know, third or fourth rounder, all said and done.
What about Casey Martin? He had that great freshman year, and then ever since then it's sort of been, well, he doesn't hit a curveball. He chases strike 2 on the outside of the plate. And then there's this stuff at shortstop where he's got this range and he's got this arm, but he gets ahead of himself and he makes all these errors. So now we're hearing, well, if he makes it in the major leagues, it'll probably be an outfielder. He had that situation where Dave Van Horn sat him down and he improved a little bit, but then we didn't get to see enough of that after that. So where do you think he stands?
You know, Casey is one of the most interesting prospects that I think is in this draft, because I think Casey's one of those guys that a lot of pro teams will be hesitant to kind of put all their chips on. But I'll tell you what, if he clicks, he can end up being an absolute star at the next level. You know, I think Casey was outstanding at third his freshman year. And, you know, they moved him over to short, which is, you know, more natural position for him. I think now for Casey, I think I could see him ending up in center field. I think obviously he has premier speed. He's just a terrific athlete. I think the biggest thing with Casey moving forward, I don't worry him whatsoever defensively. I think they will find a spot where he'll flourish defensively. I think the biggest thing for Casey is just for Casey to kind of stay in the moment a little bit. I think if you look at early this year, he didn't have a lot of confidence at the plate. He really has not had that same confidence, I feel like, since that Oregon State championship series. You know, if he can go back to the old Casey where he's just really confident, walked in the box with a plan, he has a chance to be an LB All-Star at the next level. I truly believe that when you look at his tools, his skill set. So the biggest thing for him is just to be a lot more consistent with his offensive approach. He's got to be more selective. He's got to be able to see breaking balls better. I really feel like he struggled with breaking balls early. Certainly the Shriners College Classic, to the point that you know, DVH felt like he didn't even put him on the bench on the final day. So Casey's one of those guys, again, you know, he could really struggle at the next level, or he can be an absolute all-star. So I don't think there's any in-between with Casey Martin. I think it's either feast or famine.
Well, Arkansas actually put out a video of what the new facility, or the add-on to their facility, is going to look like. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah.
And what did you think?
No, number one, I have. Number two, it's just like, I think I tweeted this the other day, but like, I feel like Baum-Walker is going to be like a totally enclosed stadium in like the next 10 years. I feel like every couple of years they're building something. And I think when you look at Arkansas, and certainly Mississippi State is in the same discussion, it is the gold standard. You know, obviously you look at the indoor facility that Arkansas has, you look at the ballpark, the fan support, it's all there. And, you know, this is kind of the next piece for those guys. And so, I thought it looked incredible, but I'm pretty much through like being like impressed by what Arkansas does, because it's like you kind of expect it at this point. So Arkansas doing facilities renovations is kind of like a broken record, but it really is incredible, and it's a testament to how far college baseball. You know, this is a sport that, you know, certainly Baum was a really nice ballpark, you know, back in the mid '90s, late '90s, 2000s. But you just look at the surge of commitment. It shows not only the fan support there locally from Hawks fans.
You know, I used to tell people several years ago that if I were an opposing SEC coach recruiting against Arkansas, I would sell the bad weather aspect. Weather's often really unpredictable in January. It's hard to, sometimes Arkansas is behind a lot of times when they go into February. You know, they built this indoor field. They've now got this thing on the boards where they're going to have more batting cages and pitching areas. They've almost tried to do everything they can to address the possibility of bad weather. Okay, we'll just jump indoors. It's not the same thing as being outdoors, but do you think that's helped maybe recruiting? Because there has been an upsurge in this program in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, you certainly have to look at it. I think if you're a college program and you're recruiting at Arkansas, you got to find kind of a chink in the armor a little bit. And I think when you look at Arkansas, obviously the weather's a factor, but there's plenty of other programs, the premier programs that deal with weather. You know, I lived in Nashville for 2 years, and the weather in Nashville is as bad as it is in Fayetteville. You know, in January and February. And granted, Vandy has a different scholarship situation, but still. You know, you still have to get those kids attracted to that school. And so I think there are plenty of examples. You know, Louisville's another one of a kind of a quote-unquote cold weather school that I think succeeds in college baseball. So for me, I mean, if I'm a recruiter, there's nothing out that helps to have the North. But I have no doubt that Dave Van Horn is kind of the same cloth as like an Eric Backett at Michigan, to where like he's never going to look at cold weather as an excuse to not win. You know, I think kind of makes his guys maybe a little tougher, you know, early in the season. So it is interesting. I mean, I covered that Kentucky series in Fayetteville a couple of years ago. It's that one, I think Arkansas scored 42 runs or something in 2 games on Saturday. I remember, I think the Friday game might have been 75, and I want to say the Saturday doubleheader might have gotten 45. And so it's certainly different. But, you know, they continue to do some things facilities-wise to, like you said, address those problems. And, again, I think Arkansas is such an elite program. If I'm a recruit, I don't care if it's cold or not. Like, I'm still going there.
How much of that do you think is the fan base? Because there's 3 or 4 programs. LSU is a great atmosphere at home. Mississippi State, obviously, especially with their new additions that they've added. And Arkansas, you know, you've been there. I mean, if you have that place full for a big series and the weather's good, it's hard to beat that atmosphere. It's such a home field advantage.
No, you're totally right. I think when you look at Arkansas's atmosphere, you know, I honestly and truly probably look at State, Ole Miss, and LSU as the only comparable places. I think A&M back before they kind of trimmed their stadium down a little bit, about a couple of thousand seats. They were kind of in the same ballpark. But those are the 3 for me. I think when you look at just atmospheres, and not only just how crazy it is, but how much people care. I think when you go to like an Arkansas game, it's a big weekend series. Like I kind of feel like you are walking into kind of a boxing match a little bit. Like there's a buzz around the ballpark. I tell you, experience that is not the play. Kind of the feeling in a lot of places. Especially as you get outside of the Southeastern Conference. I think LSU, for me, is the only other place like that where you get out of the car and you walk in. Like, it's a big, big deal. And so, you know, yeah, I think when you look at just the fan support, it's been incredible. And I think as well, I think the traveling fan support has gotten much bigger for Arkansas. You know, if you look back at the SEC tournament last year, I remember making a comment to writers. I was shocked at how many Arkansas fans had actually made the trip to Hoover. So not only getting more fans locally to kind of buy in, but they're also getting more fans to travel. And I do think it's a byproduct of playing for the national championship a couple of years ago.
Yeah, the Omaha thing has changed. I mean, 2 years ago at Omaha, it was unbelievable the number of people that came up. I mean, I never thought I'd see that because Razorback fans sort of have a reputation, especially in baseball. Okay, we'll show up here, but they didn't. In old Rosenblatt, they were never a factor.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I think the only school I can compare it to in terms of that crowd in Omaha that the Hogs had was Mississippi State, and the only reason when they play UCLA for the national championship, and the only difference would be is that UCLA had about 30 fans there. They probably had like triple that. So it didn't look as dominant in terms of fan support, but it was along the same lines. And so, yeah, I mean, the only other school that you could argue can get close to those 2 performances in terms of fan support in the championship series would be LSU. And, I mean, LSU fans go to Omaha no matter if they're in it or not. So it's a little bit different to deal with those guys.
Well, I had a question about the transfer waiver. I read an article you wrote earlier. What's kind of the update with that, and if it's still going to possibly be delayed?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think behind the scenes, I think a lot of football and basketball coaches have had a big issue with the one-time transfer rule. Which, you know what, from a total, just scholarship standpoint, like I totally get it. I mean, you're talking about two sports that are full scholarship. Baseball's much different. You deal with the draft. You deal with being a partial scholarship sport. I just think when you look at the transfer waiver, I think in a sport like baseball, if a guy's at Central Arkansas and he wants to go to Arkansas, get more money, or vice versa for that matter, in a partial scholarship sport, he should be able to kind of decrease his financial liability. If you don't like it, guess what? Let's fight to get more scholarships. And so I think it needs to happen. I think it will happen. I just don't think it's going to happen now. I think the board of directors from NCAA is clear. They do not want to see a one-time transfer rule passed. Their reasoning kind of goes against the spirit of the rule. I mean, their reasoning is, well, we don't feel like, during COVID-19, this is really a time to be passing this kind of legislation. However, I would argue from a baseball perspective, it's the best time ever because you're going to have more guys coming back as juniors because of the draft being only 5 to 10 rounds. You're going to have more high school players going to college. And, whether it's Arkansas or whether it's Mississippi State or Texas or whoever, I mean, you're going to have 55 players on a roster this fall. Well, guess what? When those kids get cut, they got to have somewhere to go. And right now, the only option they have is more than likely a junior college. So I get why they're waiting another year, but I just think from a sheer baseball perspective, it's not good.
2 or 3 weeks ago, Dave Van Horn was talking about the effects of this shutdown. They play a third of the season. They don't know. It looks like no summer ball for these guys. And he was talking about the possibility that they could all get back together maybe middle of the summer, maybe mid-July or something like that. And he said he was looking at 2 possibilities that could help. One would be even the possibility of playing some exhibition games in the summer. And if they couldn't do that, maybe in fall ball, instead of the traditional 2 that we have now, they might up it to 8, 10, 12 exhibition games. In other words, he was saying something has to be done to make up for the lack of 2/3 of the season and maybe no summer baseball.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what the NCAA does this fall and going in the spring. I mean, I've argued for years that pitchers in specific need a much longer ramp-up period. Right now you start in late January, you turn around 3 weeks later, you play baseball. I think what they need to do for the next year, given the season being canceled, is start spring practices on like January 5th. So you essentially have, like pro ball, you essentially have almost close, not quite, but you almost have 2 months of prep time. And so I think not only should they have a longer fall, I would say, I wouldn't even put a cap on it. What you do is you put a mileage cap on it. So like Arkansas goes and plays UCA 3 times. They go play Pine Bluff 3 times. So you make it playing schools that are close to you. But let's say you have a 12-game limit in the fall, and then you can start practices earlier in January. I think that's the best-case scenario because you're right. Without summer ball, I mean, if I'm Dave Van Horn, I'm worried sick about my pitchers because, I'm not, I know how I was when I was 21, and like I wasn't working out every single day, making sure my arm is in tip-top shape. And will there be a lot of pitchers that will take care of their arm during the shutdown? Absolutely. But you're asking guys to go from March until August and be in tip-top shape arm care-wise in the fall, and that's just not going to happen. I mean, you're going to spend the first month of your fall just getting guys conditioned to play baseball. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this is navigated from an NCAA perspective.
All right, Kendall Rogers, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you, too.